Hello, I'm Kochanski, Wilderness Living Skills and Survival Instructor, specializing in the boreal forest. We often call that the spruce moose forest. We could also call it the spruce moose birch forest, because the three are found considerably together, pretty predictably together. Here we have a birch sapling that we're going to do a few things with. Right off the bat, this part right here, which you find you grasp nicely with your hand, makes a exceptionally good handle, because if you leave the bark on and you drive a pointy tang, a pointy thing into it, whether it's a knife blade, especially little carving blades and so on, you just point the end and drive it into the fresh green wood, and you may split 1 in 4. For example, with this, that's pretty coarse, so it tends to split because it's so heavy. But you can get away with it if you try hard enough. Chisels, files, kitchen knives. So leave the bark on, cut an appropriate length, use it green, drive a pointy tang into it, and you have a handle almost instantly without rivets. And it dries and holds forever. Now the birch bark is obviously the most well-known of the materials in the forest, because it comes in sheets that allow you to build canoes, or even yet to provide a durable, long-lasting roof for rain, as in Scandinavia. In Russia, they sell the bark in bundles, and you may even be able to order it here, because I heard people in the coast anyway have ordered these bundles as big as a person can lift, bundled up as if they were like cedar shakes. Branches here, usually to delimb them for various purposes. You might hold it, give it a strong jerk, and using the previous branch for cushioning, proceed to delimb it better perhaps than using your knife. Because your knife, you often accidentally nick the stick, and if you're using this in an arch shelter, you have destroyed the integrity of the arch, and it snaps where you nicked it. So you can, and it means also that you learn to get by without a knife. Now the tensile strength of the bark when it's white like this is something that you'll have to deal with if you're going to use this for a form of cord. You keep things in order. A good handful of leafy boughs like that has about 5 times the shedding property of spruce boughs. So in the summer when it rains, don't use spruce needle type shingles on your roof. That's for winter. Snow clings to such things. Use leafy materials like the relative to birch, which we call alder. And so as we approach the top, when you get to be about pencil thick, that's where we're going to make rope, bindcraft and binding things, a very crucial, important aspect. Here I've got a serious fork, so I look at it and judge whether I leave it, because if I take that fork off, I'll weaken it, it'll snap right there. So you might as well just start from here, but this is anything. Now, when you want to make rope out of birch, twisted birch, when you get to about thumb thick, I think you're beyond the ability to twist to make rope out of it. So here we will maybe pluck off, leave the major one and leave it on. You can you're limited in your length, so you have to use a certain cunning in order to be able to twist this. In Finnish, I believe, they have a saying, when they're trying to impress upon you that you got to go back to the basics. They have a statement, they say, first you must learn to twist birch. Now this will twist maybe starting from here, but this here, which it would break because the branch is so heavy. Now one way I might be able to deal with that, instead of ripping it off with the hands, I take it off very carefully by cutting it and not compromising the main stalk. Being careful not to nick into there, because any nick immediately means that you have lost your here we got about arm span of usable material. Then we go to this end, and I calculate I might be able to twist it to here. So no sense being belabored. This is the rest of it is a walking staff. One way to cut through something is to hit it a few times like that, and you compromise the strength of something as strong as birch. Cuts very readily at that point. Now the white bark indicates that that is so strong, as we say here, handles. It is what keeps the wood from splitting very readily, and so you got to be careful to destroy its tenacity, which is easily done. And I'm using the back of my knife here to scrape through the bark. As thin as it is, it's surprising how it helps the birch maintain its springiness. And many trees, they survive because they can spring back after they've been bent down by the weight of snow, or like Saskatoon, for example. Bears will bend it down to eat the berries, and then the tree springs back to its original stance, and so it has to have that, so it makes good bow wood. Anyway, so I've destroyed the tensile nature of that, and if I'd have forgot that, I wouldn't have the strength to counteract that. And if I'm by myself, I might step on this in a certain way and learn to twist it, or for the learner, you start by using a tree. And when you use the tree, like the bullwhip from Crocodile Dundee, you go back and twist in the other direction once you have twisted the part there. So I carefully go around the tree. And the tree, like spruce, sometimes works better on account that it's got rougher bark. And once you have that pinching on itself, then it's held there as long as you maintain the tension. Now I could be a little ahead of myself because I could have made a crank here. The way that comes later. This being about finger thick, it's hard to break it in a special way. I'll demonstrate that where you'll know what to do. And here, oops, I let loose a little bit, and so I have to do it over again. Whoops. In spring too, you'll find that the wood is turgid, and it's sort of breaking on me here on account that here's snaps. Okay, now I'm going to twist, so at least you'll get an idea of what I'm trying to say. And as I twist, I got to move around the tree, or I'll twist it right off in that one spot. And you can see that it takes a bit of effort to put a twist into that. As we twist, we progressively go around the tree, and then at a certain point, when the stick gets really thick, you don't really have to continue going around the tree because it won't twist off there. It'll just follow. And this being a little thicker, and generally, when you can, you find trees that don't have the white bark. And I'll see if I can make it go a little further. And I'm squeezing the water out of it to the limit of my strength. Well, here I calculated that maybe I could have twisted it up to finger thick. Well, 3 more. 1, 2, 3. That's about it. Now as I let go of this, it will spin back. It has become a rope. Now generally, if you're twisting, here it fractured a bit. But generally when you're twisting now, you go back and you can twist in this direction. And here we sometimes might demonstrate the business of trying to do that by standing on the end. Pencil thick should twist. And then you got to move your foot. But this, here's a point that we have to make, that you've got 12 months of the year in which to do something. In the spring, when the tree is full of juice, I call it turgid. And what it means is that it's quite much weaker and so on, because of that, and on and on. But anyway, here I've twisted it. And here you can see that I can bend it. But because of the turgidity, you're getting you know, a much less of a demonstration. Well, here the twist, the tree was so large, as you can see, this goes around, that it was over here. And in not being careful in whatever, I fractured it there. However, you have created this situation where you have splintered it into many splints, and thereby, with that, you can actually tie knots. Here, where we're getting to little finger thickness in this case, that's usually to me a signal that when you got that white bark, you know you're going to have a much harder time of it than when the tree is not white yet. It's got that other non-papery bark. But that's what twisting is supposed to do. Now maybe we'll do it on a smaller scale and being more careful, just to point out over here, trying to do it the usual way. We get the stick fracturing where the leaves come off. When I say the non-white, this is what I mean. This will twist much better because it is in that state of development where, and even at that, you might choose to, as they say, kill the tenacity by doing this. So in miniature you will see this. Now very often you learn to twist it in a special way where you don't get a fracture so much, and you get that 90-degree handle for twisting. And so if I stand on there and I watch my twisting and move my foot, because again I'll twist it off if I don't progress up the stick. And when you reach a certain point, then using the palm of your hand you can really crank, because you're not struggling against the powerful disinclination. Now over here we twisted it very nicely, so it's very flexible as a rope. Now using a smaller tree, I might be able to Alright, so now, and obviously if you're in practice, you do a better showing. And pick on spruce trees as they grip better. Hey. I'd like to tie some kind of a knot for this. So. There, once it reaches a certain thickness, you know you're not going to twist it off, and you don't have to walk around the tree anymore. And here we've got this special bend. Old fingers. Okay, I'll step on that. Countless binding projects succumb to this. Rails on fences for caribou. Clutch, I keep letting go of it and I want to finish it right to the bitter end. Of course, the best time to be doing this is 20 years ago when you're at your prime, showing a whole bunch of students there. We've actually created a greater representation. Now here we've got that twist, that special twist that you can see there, and you got to sort of twist at the same time you're bending, or you just fracture it. But when you do it right, you'll get that 90-degree handle that allows you considerable torque, and it would have been impossible for me with my strength to have done that with that white stick. And you soften it a little bit more, and when you use it green, and it dries. You can't use it over again. Like many natural materials, they'll be usable when they're fresh, and hydrated, and they become, so we can now actually make a hanger. We can do something with that. And if we have two that are alike, here being thinner, my fingers alone can be used to make that twist. And so if I were to lash, now here the stick, before I get ahead of myself, is a little heavy, and in many cases once you've twisted it, you split it in half and double your binding. As you'll find this reasonably well described in bushcraft. And so you get two halves that pretty well double the length of your working material. And so, for example, if this by itself was too short, I might take and twist, or not twist, but just wind around the one and then proceed to tie. Of course, I might have a bar in here, but I proceed to tie it into a regular knot as tight as possible, and even that will hold it. No need to make a reef knot out of it, but just to prove that we can. You end up having a form of rope that's rarely available where birch is found, and it's got, well, bindcraft is something that is a bottleneck. You tie everything together in the wilderness more than what you might nail it or peg it together or glue it together, and so for many applications that make life easier, you have a readily available binding material in the form of twisted birch.